Welcome everybody to the regular school committee meeting of March 16th, 2015. Calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. First up on our agenda is our report from our student representative, Talia from the high school.
So Neshoba has had a great couple of weeks. The boys ice hockey team took home the Division IIIA state title last week. This was their first championship in 35 years. The Neshoba DECA members also attended the state competition last week. 19 students finished in the top 10 of their categories, and 9 will continue on to nationals in Orlando. Some categories won by Neshoba students were advertising campaign, quick service restaurant, fashion promotion plan, and entrepreneurship. Over the weekend, Neshoba Drama put on Peter Pan with Flight. They opened to a full house on Friday night and continued to draw crowds throughout the weekend. They put on a fantastic show. Last week, we also had NIAS come. They shadowed students, observed in classes, and were given tours by Neshoba student ambassadors. On March 3rd, Neshoba Best Buddies sponsored Spread the Word to End the Word Day. Students wore blue and signed banners to pledge their support for acceptance and support to stop the use of the word retarded in a derogatory manner. Last Friday, the student athletes attended the Community Reading Day at the elementary school as celebrity readers. Also, Neshoba Robotics attended a competition in Reading 2 weekends ago and were the top seeded robot at the competition. We are all looking forward to the spring sports season and hopefully less snow. Thank you.
Any questions for Talia? Thank you. That was perfect timing. Harry just walked in. Next on our agenda is new business, and the first item is calendar recommendations.
So as we talked about when I first presented the calendar, we were waiting to do a second phase where we were looking at late starts to address collaboration for our teachers and administration at the high school and district staff. So this particular calendar is the exact same calendar that you saw in March, on March 2nd, and with the addition of the proposed late starts for the high school, which, as you know, the high school has been having late starts during the midterm and final exam periods for collaboration, additional collaboration time to prepare for NIASC and other professional development opportunities. So Perry has looked at this issue and maybe say a couple of words about how you chose the number and how you arrived at the day.
So the purpose is to give teachers time to collaborate. I have always believed that one of the best professional development opportunities you can give teachers is time to work with each other on curriculum, assessment, instruction, intervention, and I've had a real difficult time being able to build that in for large groups of teachers into the master schedule. So this would create time specifically for teachers to work in structured ways around curriculum, assessment, instruction, and intervention. So I tried to figure out, as you know, we have to have 990 instructional hours over the course of the year, so I needed to make sure that any time that was used for late starts was factored into that. So through calculating that, figured out that we could accommodate 12 late starts over the course of the year, 12 additional late starts over the course of the year. So I wanted things that were reasonably close together, because sometimes it can be hard if you start something and you don't meet again for 6 weeks. It takes you the first half of your meeting time to remember where you were. I wanted to try to avoid having late starts on weeks that already had something else going on, so I tried to avoid weeks where there might be an early release. I tried to avoid as much as possible weeks that were right before or right after a break. I think there was one place where I wasn't able to do that in the beginning of January. I tried to kind of cluster them where I could together, so it would be like late start, 2 weeks off, late start, 2 weeks off, late start, rather than just arbitrarily saying, you know, every 3 weeks we would do a late start. So I tried to be reasonably meaningful in the way that I clustered them. So it's 3 late starts, so that's 6 hours of collaborative time per quarter, 24 hours of collaborative time over the course of the year.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Would that time be used by department, or how do you?
So I had a discussion with the department heads about that. So my initial plan is to use that the same way that I've used professional learning team time previously. So one thing that I've done with teachers in the past is I've traded them a duty if they were willing to spend a period every 8-day cycle working with somebody in the same sort of capacity. And so I have a template that I use with them where, so let's say that 2 English teachers say we happen to have a planning period at the same time and we're both teaching the same course, and so we want to collaborate around that. So I essentially trade them a duty where I say, I'll take away one of your study hall responsibilities, and you'll then meet once every 8-day cycle. That'll be sort of a duty for you. And I have a template that I ask them to fill out where they come up with a goal for what they're supposed to do. There's certain parameters. They have to talk about the curriculum they're going to be looking at, how they're going to work common assessments into that, how they're going to be analyzing student data. So I have a template for how I ask teachers to work together during collaborative time already. So I would start with that as the baseline. I would certainly, in other words, the expectation would be that everybody in the building would be working in a professional learning team with somebody else who teaches the same course, or a small group of people who teach the same course, and use that as the template. I would certainly be open to some flexibility. So for example, one of the department heads asked, I'll use language arts as an example. All of the English teachers are focusing as a department on writing skills and making sure that we have common expectations vertically and horizontally within the English department, that when they look at a piece of writing, they're all assessing that piece the same way, that you've got good inter-rater reliability. So that's something that they're already doing within the English department. So I would certainly be open to the possibility of English saying, we would like to use the first 6 late starts to work together as a department, and we're going to focus specifically on writing, and here's the plan for what that's going to look like. And then for the last 6 meetings, we would break off and we would be working in small groups. So I'm open to some flexibility. Where I'm not open to flexibility is that this isn't time for teachers to be grading papers. It's not time for teachers to be planning independently. This is collaborative time for teachers to be focusing on curriculum assessment and instruction.
My other question was, on this one that we have in our, was attached to our agenda, this calendar, there are no late starts for midterm exams in January. Was that intentional? Or?
No, so actually I had somebody ask a question about that. If you look over on the list of stuff on the right-hand side,
it's corrected. Nancy, if you click the link that's in the packet, not the link from the agenda.
Okay.
It got loaded late because
I thought I had seen them before, but it's not on this one, but I got it now.
It's in the packet.
Okay.
And the one you had previously, I think on the right-hand side, it had said late starts, but then those 3 days hadn't been shaded purple. So
Okay.
Lee was kind enough to go in and shade those 3 days purple. So yes, the intent is still to have late starts for the midterm, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a full day on Friday, which was the same approach that we took this year.
Okay. And then my final question is, do we know how this impacts the buses? Who's done that?
It doesn't really impact the buses at all. They get a late start too. So they'll do their elementary run, which will start roughly around 8 o'clock, 7:40.
Well, so it impacts them because they can flip-flop that, right?
Yeah, I mean, they just come in later that day. There's no extra time. It's no financial impact.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for Perry or anybody else about this?
Well, I guess you will have some way to verify or enforce the collaboration as opposed to people.
Correct. So they'll be submitting a plan. This is how we're going to use our time. As administrators, we'll be participating in those meetings also. I like to be very careful about that because it's their time, and having an administrator sit in for you for 2 hours while you're meeting can change the nature of the meeting. But we're going to have, so what we'll do is we'll take the different PLTs or departments and they'll be assigned to different administrators, and then we'll be responsible for tracking them. So I might have the English department, and Brian Cody might have the science department, Kira O'Donnell might have social studies, and so on. So we'll have specific PLTs that we'll be attached to, and then we'll be responsible for making sure we're touching base with them, visiting meetings from time to time, checking in on their work. And then they'll have certain products that they come up with at the end of the year. So they'll have SMART goals that they create, and then they'll be providing feedback on that. And then what we'd also like to do is connect this as much as possible to the professional practice goals that they're developing and student learning goals that they're developing as part of the teacher evaluation process as well.
And you've done the math, you know that we still hit the hours.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I checked my spreadsheet multiple times.
Okay.
And it sounds great, but is there any way to kind of track how it affects teaching learning?
There there isn't a simple quantitative way to track how it affects teaching and learning. I mean,
But you're hoping to see something.
I'm hoping to see lots of different things. I'm hoping to see more development of common assessments. I'm hoping to see more collaborative teacher analysis of student learning. I'm hoping to see more changes in instructional practices to accommodate that. So if two math teachers who are both teaching Algebra 2 are seeing that kids are struggling on the same concepts, that they're then making changes to their instructional practices and then seeing student achievement improve. But it's very difficult to draw a straight line between, I planned with this person on this day and suddenly my kids are getting better scores on X, Y, or Z. There's tremendous research to suggest that this type of professional development impacts student achievement, but it's not a straight line. So there are lots of things I'm looking for. Additional courses. I could see 2 teachers. I would be open to the possibility of 2 teachers who want to plan a new course, using some meetings to work on that as well.
And your feedback from the teachers so far, they're for this?
Yes.
Because my only thing I'm thinking back to, I'm not sure if it was contract negotiations or something where teachers were discussing that they have a tough time transitioning from professional development, or maybe it was parent-teacher conferences, to then being the teacher in the classroom. Remember that being an issue?
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
just wondering.
Well, that's part of the
if we
reason
heard-
behind 2 hours, a 2-hour late start as opposed to like 1-hour late starts. 1 hour late starts would be great too. That would have more of an impact on transportation. But with 2 hours, this isn't going to be time where teachers can work with kids. So kids won't be showing up and then the teachers getting pulled away. I mean, that's a pretty significant amount of time that they can sit, get focused, and work on things. One thing that I did not do is I did not poll all the teachers in the building. I've been talking with the department heads and getting their feedback and asking them to go back to their departments and come back. But this is something that teachers have been saying to me en masse, we need late starts to accomplish this. But they've been saying en masse, we need more time for collaboration, we need more time for professional development. And this is the best solution that I've been able to find for that. And the feedback, I have not heard any negative feedback from anybody.
I think it sounds great.
Is there a teacher in the building who will grumble? I'm sure that there's a teacher in the building who will grumble. But the feedback that I've heard has been very positive.
So they're all required to go? They're all and this doesn't affect contract negotiations at all?
No. Not adding any time to their professional day.
For what it's worth, we heard that feedback too in the roundtable discussions, that they would like more time.
So presumably this is sort of for next year, and then at the end, how will you evaluate whether you want to continue with it next year? I mean, will you take teacher feedback? Are you looking for,
yes,
concrete proof or evidence of some sort?
Yeah, so as part of the process, I'll be looking for them to provide specific evidence about the things that they've been working on. But I'll also be soliciting their feedback to tell me. I didn't go out and ask for a vote on whether we should do this or not, because I felt like it was really my responsibility to make this decision, bringing it to you. But I will be asking them specifically, how did this go? Did this work? Have you found this to be valuable? Have been the advantages? What have been the negative ramifications? So yeah, we'll actively want to know how this has played out. And I would imagine that they will have successes that we hadn't anticipated, and I would imagine that there'll be some things that are, I've done a lot of work around getting teachers to collaborate, and it's not as easy as it sounds, because inevitably there'll be 2 teachers who say they love to collaborate, and then when they actually have to start making collaborative decisions, they say, well, hold on a second, I'm not sure that I want to do it that way. And so, there'll be work that we'll have to do around helping them with decision-making processes and things like that. So I don't think it'll be all smiles and candy corn, but my experience is that this is the kind of capacity-building endeavor that really allows you to do some powerful things.
So you're initiating this, but you're hoping that they take some ownership?
Oh, yeah. Well, at the end of the day, my hope is that by the end of the year, they say, we better always have something like this because this is possible. And so I provided some examples of times when I traded a duty. What I heard from the teachers who did that was that was the most positive, powerful professional opportunities that they've had, when they were able to work together, collaborating on a regular basis with somebody else who's doing the same thing they're doing.
This is totally different than professional development days, and those aren't going away.
This is not connected, this is different from early release days.
And I think it'll be a big hit with the students.
They're sitting in the bus waiting.
There's a lot of research that says that.
Well, I know, late starts
being
benefit
able
from
to
high school,
come a
yes,
little bit later.
absolutely. Yeah. I don't think you get any out of it.
Any other questions or discussion about this?
Is that the only addition to the calendar?
Yes, the last time you saw it.
Yes. So it's not specific to changing this calendar, but I did hear from a couple people in Harvard that they're intending to move to a March vacation
Oh, really?
for next year and eliminate the February and April one. So hopefully there'll be more districts that do that, so we can consider it.
I think, need to vote on this tonight, if everybody feels like we've discussed it enough. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to accept the calendar as presented for 2015 to 2016 school year.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Next item on the agenda is the issue of building rentals. There's been some questions that have come up recently, and I was asked to put it on the agenda. So here it is, to talk about the policies regarding what parts of the building people use and how it gets used, and I'll let you.
Sure. So we've had the same policy in place pretty much the entire time that I've been here. It's pretty similar to other districts that I've been. So essentially we, according to our lease with our towns, we have the ability to rent all of the spaces. We can designate what spaces we have available. We have, which we have done by protocol. And since they are set, once they are set, due to a number of court cases, not relative to us, but nationally, we are obligated to follow that protocol without any discrimination to any group. So we have to implement it fairly and equitably to any group that comes to our door. And as long as we are able to meet the requirements that they're asking for, we do so. There are, I can't even think of any particular reasons why we have had to say no, except that the primary one would be we're using it, that we have dibs, and then town has dibs and so forth. So those are the priorities that we follow. We have done that with all users. There are conflicts that do arise. We have Bill Clary oversees that policy and the implementation of that policy. He works very carefully with George, if it rises to that occasion, with the building principal to address the issues that come up, and any type of additional expenses that do arise, and there are some relative to the events, are all passed back to the renter. And then if the renter doesn't want to do those, then we have our opt-out. And so until that happens, then we really have to follow through and rent the building.
So the issue is, right, that.
Well, the
Yeah, go
issue
ahead.
is that I got a call from a teacher saying she is representing a large group of teachers, that a renter is coming in and that they're using classroom space. And the few issues that she brought up was all the kindergarten classrooms at Mary Rowlandson are allergy-free, safe
Aware,
zones
yeah.
or whatever. So they have no control over monitoring. If, just for example, someone's having a peanut butter sandwich on the desk and if it's clean property and kid comes and sits down Monday morning, and that was a main concern. As we know, teachers spend hundreds of dollars on their own supplies in the classroom, and there's no way for them to lock them up to be safe. And it was, just the general policy in general. That was a concern. Many teachers set up their classrooms on Friday, especially like the younger grades, with centers and the stuff like that, and they can't necessarily do that. They now have to come in earlier on Monday, and who likes to come early in on Monday, and do that instead of the other time. That were the big concerns, and for them, that the teachers are not happy with it at all. They understand that you can't say one group can do it, one group cannot, so ask that we review the whole policy for those reasons, and that they hope they can resolve it without filing a grievance. That was a nice way of saying it.
I didn't know we rented classrooms.
I didn't either.
I thought we only rented like the auditorium
Right,
and
like-
the cafeteria. Like, I'm
I didn't know
very
either
surprised at
until
that
she
because
told me
that's
that.
really, they're.
Well, I think that's personal space.
Yeah, but
It's very personal space.
a lot of groups use just one classroom, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, small groups like that.
Well,
So,
they also have snacks. I used to do brownies and we always had snacks.
sure.
Right.
Wow, that's very concerning.
So I think it's something we need to look at, and it's probably one of those things that you don't really think of until it happens, unfortunately. And
So what if we said, you can't use those classrooms anymore? What would be the financial impact? How much rent do we get from classrooms?
It's not financial, because a lot of Girl Scouts are thinking.
they're nonprofit, so they don't.
Yeah, but
We're
we're talking
talking
about
money
renting.
for them.
They do, couple things. I don't want to vouch for every group, because it's just, our policy of renting is very complicated because because of the leases Michael described. A lot of school districts you pay for everything you rent, and you can rent anything you want. We're a little bit different, we have to take care of ourselves, the towns, to at least a certain extent first, and then this. Over the years, I'm not telling you a group or two hasn't got in there, but technically the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, they should pay. And I know there are instances where they do, because they're a separate nonprofit organization. Now, when there's places where they haven't, that's a possibility. But regardless of that bookkeeping issue, they are considered an outside user, because they're a separate nonprofit organization like anybody else. They use classrooms. They're a good example of somebody who uses classrooms. Other people use classrooms. If we stop renting classrooms, is that your question?
Yeah.
The financial impact would be relatively negligible. It's not a big financial issue. It's more of a practical issue. We couldn't rent them to anyone, and there'd be a lot of people who would be disappointed they couldn't use a classroom.
I think we should limit it to public spaces, not teachers' classrooms. That's their personal space. Plus, I think the bigger issue is, and we're looking at this in the policy subcommittee right now, the,
Allergy wear.
allergy
Right.
problems, I mean.
And I
that's-
think another comment, this is one of the custodians is now moved to Sunday, so he now cleans on Sunday for this could be wrong, this is the information I received. Cleans on Sunday for the weekly stuff, whatever happens during the week Friday, in addition to cleaning up after the groups that were there. So it's,
In the instance of, I think you're talking about, that's been changed.
Okay. But the allergy things and the teacher's personal stuff, I think is huge.
At certain points, when the rental gets large, we require them to hire different people. Like if they're going to generate a lot of traffic, we require them to hire a police officer. If they're going to use a kitchen, they require to hire someone from the kitchen. If the group is using a decent amount of space in the building, we require them to hire an exclusive custodian, which we've done that case. So keep an eye on things like that.
Right.
And because the overall organization cleanup is beyond what the person just happens to be in the building is really able to do.
So
They
doesn't
pay
it,
for that custodian.
doesn't it happen now that some groups will ask a teacher for a favor, can you use your classroom? And then that teacher says yes, and then,
I don't know, I'm sure it does.
and that's probably not, I'm assuming there's no money exchanged at that. If we're asking. I mean, so.
But if we did not rent classrooms, those are the types of things we have to make sure didn't happen.
Right.
if we did not rent classrooms.
Correct.
Which is, like I said, fine. It's not, it's financially, it's negligible. It's not a problem. But as long as everybody understood that that would have to mean everybody, otherwise we'd be open to, you know, discrimination.
Yeah.
As in-
I think, as always, it's hard to have the words never or always in a policy or a protocol. You know, I think we have to manage the issues. I think the allergy awareness issue is a huge issue. Obviously, you know, misusing school-based equipment, no matter who owns it, is
Right.
inappropriate. And so that has to be managed and managed effectively. And we can look at our policy to strengthen that language so that when a renter rents it, they understand, you know, the level of inspection that we're going to go through to make sure that they understand they'll be charged or so forth. You know, we can manage the grade levels of the buildings that we would rent classrooms. In other words, we can say in the protocol, we're only going to rent high school classrooms because there's less teacher setup to design of classrooms. You know, I'm just saying, giving an example. So those are kinds of things that protocol-wise or policy-wise, we can definitely put into place for the new school year and address those kinds of things.
And what Michael said earlier too about following the rules and things like that. If someone consistently does not follow the rules,
Right.
then we can
Toss them out.
toss them out, you know, for lack of a better term. Because at that level, I mean, that's not discriminatory. That's just following the rules. We have regulations. We have the right to make regulations.
And you gotta be careful, because a lot of the singular classrooms that I'm aware of are all enrichment, you know, whether they're DI or robotics or there's something. So, I mean, and they're not necessarily renters.
Your school.
Yeah, those are school-based.
Well, there's students that are there, but like DI is run by parents. That's not run by the school.
So we,
You know, and robotics, yes, they've hired somebody to do robotics, I think at Hale or whatever, but
It's a school club, though, school sponsored.
But again, it's pretty much
So
run by.
they shouldn't have to pay.
it doesn't matter who runs it.
Well, no, and
If
that's
we
fine.
sponsor it,
It's
then we
just
just
school
let them have
sponsored.
space.
Without space.
Right.
But I think you have to be careful about how you, renters, because they're the students doing enrichment.
Yeah.
But if it's a school thing, then they get, obviously they, I
Right.
think, and in the example, if it's a school thing and the kids are there, and the teacher says, you know what, these 10 kids were in this classroom and my stuff was messed up, chances are she knows at least one parent could be like, hey, listen, your kids were here, and
Right.
so
And they should
when
be
it's school
respectful,
related,
absolutely.
and that's, I think, easier to sort of manage that. I personally think common areas. It's a huge safety issue.
And piggybacking off Lynn's example, since DI is handled differently, or at least it used to be in different schools, whether it's a school-sponsored enrichment
Correct,
or
still is, yeah.
strictly parent-run, then you've got sort of that added complication of some DI teams are automatically sanctioned because it's a school activity, whereas other DI groups wouldn't be able to use school space, and then that just gets a little.
They're all school sponsored, and they have
Right,
schools
DI
on the
is
team.
school sanctioned, so no
But
matter
it's
who. so
run by
we don't-
volunteers, we have a lot of programs like that.
Yeah.
We don't think they're volunteers.
But I mean, to your point, Julie, I mean, yeah, they need to tighten up on it because there are those issues. But I would just be cautious about how you word a policy,
Definitely,
because I wouldn't want those parent-run enrichments to go away.
right.
So can we get a policy subcommittee to review that particular policy for our next meeting? Is that reasonable?
The next meeting is booked, but
Okay,
the spring.
okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Any other discussion on that issue? No, okay. Moving right along to the reason why probably most of you are here. Discussion of the fiscal year 2016 budget. And per the law, we will be starting with a public hearing on the budget, and then we'll move into a discussion.
So the budget that is being proposed is a just slightly over 5% increase for $2,551,856. And this is the budget that the school committee has in their hands and is deliberating currently. And some gift of time has allowed us to get the governor's proposed budget, and the minimum local contributions have been set. So now we have what I hope to be correct information regarding assessments. That is, that won't change between now and June 30th. So Bolton's assessment for that increase would be $769,680, up 6.15%. Lancaster would be $684,692, up 6.42%. And then Stowe would be an increase of $1,224,182, or up 8.16%. These are based on the assessment formula of the regional agreement. Any public comment at this point?
Should we move on to our discussion then?
We can close the hearing and move on to the discussion.
Do you close the hearing?
You can.
Well, actually, I do have a question before you close it. So those assessment numbers have changed since the last time they were published. Can
Correct.
you speak to some of the adjustments for those?
So the only reason those have changed are that the minimum local contribution figures have changed. So those are set by the state. So that's the only thing that's changed. Nothing has changed in the budget. We've not made any changes to the budget itself.
Yes. So that's a regulatory change in the state?
Correct.
Compared to the previous effort back in January?
Correct. So any changes that the district makes tonight, district school committee makes tonight, would further impact those assessments.
Tom?
Yeah, just call to your attention, I think we copied your, the administration. Selectmen and Stowe at our meeting last week voted the following. Board of Selectmen communicates to the Neshoba Regional District in way of our concern that its current estimate of $16,114,631 gives the dollar amount, an increase of 7.47%, which is what it was last time I think we said. This significant increase is $320,000 greater than the $800,000 total annual recurring revenue increase Stowe expects to collect in 2016. Given the substantial gap, the board requests that the Neshoba Regional District, through its school committee, strive to reduce its 2016 budget to the greatest extent possible. It passed on a 4-to-1 vote of the board last week, and obviously this unfortunate adjustment exacerbates the problem. The only other thing I had seen at some point was a suggestion, perhaps you're going to get into adjustments suggested, and as long as this is our chance to comment on it, I'll bring it up in advance perhaps. And that is this superintendent's recommendation for adjustment might include basically elimination of the funds necessary to move the portable classrooms. I understand you need to, if you're going to adjust this down, you have to cut somewhere. But I have significant concerns about that, especially as I've been, for the past several months, actively involved with the high school space study task force. And that portable classroom is sitting there. It could be available up and running for your opening of school in September, and add 2 more classrooms. I think at a time when we're looking at significant space crunch, at the same time we're trying to reduce capital obligations. Penny wise, pound foolish, perhaps, is the thought that comes to mind. I urge the committee to look very hard at that as an area of reduction. Thank you.
Yes.
In view of the pressure this seems to be putting on all the towns, it seems to me running the E&D account at the level proposed in the budget is inappropriate. That should be one of the things that gets drawn down, and that may be in some of your proposals, but I think with all these towns being very pressed, plan on ending the process, $1 million sitting in that fund, and the prospect that it will grow to $2 million at the end of the year is a bad process given the kind of pressure it puts on the towns.
Just to echo that, if I might, we had a presentation at our Stowe Selectmen last week from the Minuteman School Committee. And by comparison, they are running their E&D balance projected for next year at $145,000.
Any other public comments? Close the public hearing.
Where is the budget that was promised about 2 weeks ago or 2 meetings ago that said the increase would be between 2 and 3%?
That's what's coming.
5 plus. Okay.
That's what's coming right now.
That's fine here.
Okay. Close the public hearing, and just as an official piece of business, and now we'll move into a discussion of the budget and a discussion of the proposed adjustments.
Okay. So I've broken down these adjustments into revenue and expenditures. And I want to start the conversation by saying most all of these have impact one way or the other. So I want to make sure that you understand what the impact is. Obviously, what we need to do to get a budget passed out of this body and then by our town voters is a critical direction, but both have to be in consideration of our mission and our goals that we've set for ourselves and the standards that we hold ourselves to for performance of our students. So the revenue side obviously comes with a little ease in that the time has given us a gift of knowing what the governor is committing to education, and also we have more time to commit our numbers in processes such as kindergarten registration for all-day kindergarten. So based on that, we feel comfortable adding another $75,000 for kindergarten for all day as an offset. Regional transportation, based on the House 1 budget, we're expecting about $65,000 more from based on what he's proposed and what the DESE is saying they're going to give for a percentage. Chapter 70, right now it's at $20 per student, and so based on the number in the budget that they've proposed, that would give us about $67,000, a little more than that, $67,620. On E&D, I know it's a topic for conversation. As you know, E&D arises out of end-of-year balances in additional revenues that were unexpected or expenditures that did not come to be. And so any kind of additional money that we draw down on E&D will have an impact on future years as we do use it as currently as a recurring revenue source. So it's something you just have to be mindful of, that for example, adding another $200,000 now essentially will mean next year, unless there's another revenue from another source to replace that, it will mean most likely we'll have $200,000 we'll have to cut from the budget as a starting place. Looking at one of the projects in the capital plan, we could take another $10,000 from the parking lot revolving fund from the high school fees. And unfortunately, time was not a gift because as part of the governor's budget, he did cancel the all-day kindergarten grant. So for us, that means that we have a reduction of $72,000. So that on the revenue side, gives us a good starting place for making adjustments to the budget. All of those I feel very comfortable making and having those accepted by the school committee. Under the reductions, these get more challenging. I've tried to give a little bit of a rating. This would be the order that I would do them based on looking at the entire budget, looking at the entire system, the pieces that go into place and what we're trying to do. System-wide, George and Monica have been able to look further at our insurance and cut $125,000 from that account. We think we comfortably can do that without impacting anything further there. Under new salaries, this would be positions that were proposed new, so we had 8 positions proposed new. At $58,000, I'm proposing that we reduce that amount to $53,067. There's a slight savings there at $39,464. Looking at the reduction in enrollment at Florence Sawyer, we can now make some changes in the related art schedules. So we can see a reduction of about $21,000 there. For facilities, our version of a capital plan is scheduled maintenance. I would reduce it by $180,000. As mentioned earlier, we have a couple of big ticket items that get to that $180,000 pretty quickly, which would be the modular move that we had talked about and voted on not too long ago. And then some minor reconstruction projects at the high school. We would just hold off on doing those for another year. That still leaves us a fund for other scheduled maintenance at the high school and other schools throughout the district. So I think it's important. I think if we don't keep up with the maintenance of our buildings, we will have issues that we can't control the costs in the future. Under teaching and learning, we've revamped the scheduling of when we will have a release of our science curriculum, and so we can push out the purchasing of new materials there. So I'm recommending a reduction of $85,000. And last but not least, as I've talked before, we are 80% staff. We have to, in order to get to large dollars quickly, we have to look at staff. I heard you loud and clear to stay away from existing classrooms, existing positions. So these are 4 of the new salaries proposed in this budget that we just had in the public hearing, and that would generate about $212,000 of a cut. And so the positions, again, just push off for a year. We would be back here next year asking for these 2 special ed staff, the math specialist, and the related services position, which was a combination of adding more time for OT, PT, and speech. And that amount, $1,008,579, gets us to approximately 2%, which gets us down to roughly 3% budget.
And if we were to go with all of these, how much would it reduce the assessments for the town?
Turn that over to George.
Yeah, can I ask a question in the meantime? Do you feel confident that we can legally provide all the services for our special ed students without adding these people? I mean, like meeting all IEP requirements and kids getting all the services that are in the IEP,
Yeah.
in the plan?
Yes, the 2 special ed teachers absolutely do. The related services, it's very tight, and that's why we added it. Right now, I'm relying on looking very closely at those IEPs. We do get a special education grant and looking at contracted services as a piece of that. Right now, we contract for other kinds of services, so it's about, really making sure what our priorities are. And obviously, as the needs come up, we have to do them, so we would do them. We would have to make some other decisions during the course of the year if we made those decisions.
The rough impact on the reduction of $1 million would be On the specific assessments would be Bolton would be 446,000 or 3.57%. Lancaster would be about 385,000 or about 3.6%. Stowe would be 844,000 or about 5.6%. Total assessment increase would be 1.67 or about 4.4%.
Want to start? I have lots of thoughts, but I don't want to steal the stage.
Start ahead.
Well, I personally I said it last time, I'll say it again, I'm just disappointed that we didn't get any of our new programs that we've been wanting for years, and since 2008, we've said, no, 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 we can't, nothing new, nothing new, nothing new. I don't know if it's even possible at this juncture, but I would like to go with some of these reductions, but not all of them. I don't know, throw out my ideas and see what people think. Is that fair enough? Okay. On the, going through the expenditure reductions, the first one, the system-wide, of course, I'm not going to say no to that. We'll take that.
Yeah.
The new salaries, that kind of bums me out, because that means we're not getting experienced teachers. And I can't do that one. Florence Sawyer, I guess we have to let that go. If the numbers are saying that we're down, we're down. The facilities, this scheduled maintenance, I'd like to see 100,000 of that stay to bring the modular units over. I agree with Mr. Hawks. I think it's pound-wise and penny-foolish to not take those, and we need it. And we had talked about at that time that wouldn't cost us more than $100,000. We even voted on that. So we'll take the 80,000 there because we can. But give us the modular units. The teaching and learning, if we can postpone purchasing that science curriculum, then let's do it. So I say we'll take that one. And then on the new salaries, I would love to see us take $100,000 more out of the E&D for a total of $300,000 to go to hiring 3 foreign language teachers, 1 for each middle school, and get our foreign language program that we've been talking about for so many years at least a jump start.
Yeah. Be great.
Would that cover it?
Well, I'm assuming if we had $200,000 for 4 positions, that 3 positions could be covered in $200,000. I don't know for sure. But throw that out. Anybody can say if they think those are good ideas, bad ideas.
I'm worried about cutting the sped. Specifically, teachers from the Bolton School contact me and tell me how much they really need another sped person there. So I'm not comfortable with cutting that sped teacher.
Okay.
In fact, I'm really not comfortable with cutting any new salaries. And I agree with you on the modular move. I don't understand. That was a choice. This whole document is a choice.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that's a surprising choice, given the meetings that we've had. And that concerns me, just seeing it on there concerns me. I don't know why that's there. And the insurance, I agree with Nancy on that one. I mean, it's there. You guys mentioned it before, that you thought that you would be able to do that. And I'm disappointed to see the salaries go away. I think there's a bigger discussion on E&D, but I'm going to wait to hear what everybody else has to say. It may alter my view.
Lynn?
I'm a little disappointed that all these choices have to do with the increase that you were asking for. And because specifically, as I recall, I thought that the school committee had asked you to actually go back and look at the 50 million and try to find where we could actually reduce some of this cost. Not what we were looking for, because the two things that stood out through the whole conversation was we need sped and we need space. And that's what you took, sped and space. And that's troubling, because your choices are take it out of the 50 million or take it out of what you need, and you took it out of what you need. I'm not really sure. I don't know if you can.
We had asked to have instead of a 5% increase, to try for a 3% increase.
But instead of
So
taking.
that's what that.
No, it was, you can describe it.
I specifically, in fact, I'm going to be asking to edit the minutes because I specifically asked for it, and I think I used the word challenge, to come out of the $50 million existing budget versus trying to control the very small amount that we're looking for next year. So where could we be tighter on the existing budget and renegotiate contracts? Obviously not teacher salaries, but where could we look at that? And I think that there was some wiggle room in there, at least that was what was indicated to me. So I'm surprised that we didn't go back in and look for more opportunity with the existing 50 million.
Some of the contracted services.
Contracted services, I mean, I know nobody wants to hear it, but I mean, if you really want to get into where there's some opportunities, and I don't know as much as I would like to about the budget, but certainly the 45,000 from the 145 that was allocated in the budget for the modular unit, which is now being taken care of with your recommendation, which is fine, but vehicle allowances for people who don't have them written into contracts, I've heard so many times over the months that we're not a corporation and we can't be acting like a corporation, and if it takes 10 miles to get from the furthest point of the district to furthest east to furthest west, it's 10 miles, and people are getting significant vehicle allowances, then maybe that's something we look at eliminating. Unless it's in a contract that states it can't be eliminated. I think that that's a corporate benefit, and we have to decide which one are we doing, corporate or not corporate. And I know that's not popular, and I'm sure that there are people who are going to hate me for saying it, but frankly, it's painless. Maybe not to the person who's receiving it, but I think we need to question that. There was a couple of other positions in the document that was circulated that are non-student facing that we could look to either combine the duties or potentially reduce that role, and we haven't done that. We haven't looked at that. We've looked at things that are painful, and that's what I see, rather than opportunities where we could tighten the belt.
Well, I just want to respond to the latter part. I looked at all positions that we can do. And when I look at the district improvement plan, the teacher evaluation responsibilities that we have, we are shy on administrative staff now. I can't imagine what we would do and the burden that I would be putting right back on building principals without the limited district staff that I have, because I assume that's where you're thinking. The supervision ratio of staff to supervisor is outrageous. And, I would like to, that's an area that I would like to work, but I don't put that out there because that's not where I think we can invest now. I want to invest in the things that we've been talking about. But the numbers we have now are outrageous, and to cut any number of administrators now would be, I think, the wrong direction for the district.
Administrators, when you say administrators, are you saying administrative support staff, or I don't know what?
An administrator is anybody who can partake in the evaluation process. So every one of our administrators takes part in the evaluation process.
So I don't even know what that looks like. So I can't say that I agree with you or I don't agree with you. I have to take you on your word for
Right,
that.
so everybody on that list essentially is a that's in teaching and learning, building principal, or central office has some evaluative capacity.
Assistant principals too.
Assistant principals, coordinators, principals, superintendents, assistant superintendents.
So what about the treasurer? I mean, I'm gonna throw stuff out because
Sure.
I don't have a deep knowledge here. But the treasurer was part-time and now the treasurer is full-time.
No. Nope.
Is that not true?
That's not true. So actually, we reduced it not too long ago slightly as a cost-saving measure, but it's a job share job. So we reduced another HR function and, as you suggested, combined the treasurer functions with HR specialist functions. So now we have one person doing 2 part-time jobs.
So if there really is no place to look at with existing personnel, then I think we need to look at E&D. And I think maybe, you know, if you folks have, and I know you and I talked briefly, but if you have opinion on it, I would like to hear what it is before I jump in and make some crazy suggestions.
I'll go ahead. So thank you for putting this together. This is helpful. I do want to just make a few general statements that I think are very important. We have a per pupil cost in the bottom 1/2 to 1/3 of Massachusetts. We rank continuously in the top 1/3 in Massachusetts. Our per pupil cost is $3,000 over the lowest in the state. Our per pupil cost is under the top one by $17,000 in the state. The cost to send someone to Minuteman is $29,797 a student. We have to find money other than cutting this every year. We have to make this a priority for our kids. This is what we need to do at some point.
This is what we need to do?
No, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are valuing and putting the money into our school systems. And we can't come here every year and say we can't add anything.
I agree. I did some digging on those numbers too. The state average is 14,000 per pupil, and we're at 13,000. Below the state average in per pupil spending. And, you know, I don't know how many people know that. And
That's wrong.
we look at our, what do you mean that's wrong? It's correct.
No, that's what we're going to state, but we're in a unique position where our towns actually own the buildings, and so our capital expenses for the schools don't show up. So it's actually much higher. It's actually about 16,000.
Now, any money that the towns expend relative to schools is captured in their reporting to the state.
So the capital expenses from the towns.
If they report it as to the schools, it goes,
Like the
it
new
gets
boiler
factored.
or something.
No, like Center School. Yeah. So Center School is reported in, and they've actually taken those numbers into consideration?
Yeah. And I also compared to a lot of other regional school districts, because I thought that might be more apples to apples. You know, just to name a few that we like to compare ourselves to. Algonquin is at over 15,000 per pupil. Lincoln Sudbury is over 18. Concord Carlisle is over 20. Acton Boxborough is over 14. And then I put in Lexington, because we always like to compare ourselves to Lexington. They're over 6, they're just about 17. And then I put in, just for fun, so that, because people often talk about Hudson and Maynard, our neighbors, and Hudson's at 14,000 and Maynard is at 13,500. And we're at, I'm sorry, did I say 14,500? And we're at 13. We're even below Hudson and Maynard. Our per pupil spending is not
Except that
high.
the majority of that comes from the taxpayers, right? So,
Well, that's a different issue. I mean, so our problem is that,
when you're looking at your tax bill, maybe not, but.
well, no, but what I'm saying is, you know, if our tax bills are high, which we keep hearing over and over and over again, and they are high, perhaps it's because we don't have enough economic development or enough of a tax base, but to always say it's because we're spending too much on our schools is not fair.
I agree.
And that was my reasoning for going through and digging up those numbers, because I think that's not often discussed.
And I feel like we as a school committee have an obligation to the schools to try to help make a good budget for the schools. And then we have to talk to the towns. If we can't afford it, yes, we have to come back and do this. But at some point, there's going to be ramifications. We're not going to continue to be in the top 1/3 if we don't have technology, if we can't afford good teachers, if we can. It's going to affect us, and it will catch up to us. Just like it'll catch up to us if our taxes keep going up.
And you're not getting anything for your taxes.
And you're not, right. So we're in a real quandary. But cutting the schools year over year, just getting the absolute minimum increase is going to bite us as well, just like it's going to bite us if we don't have additional revenue sources in the town. Do we want to end up as the bottom school for cost per pupil in Massachusetts? Or, some days the numbers are going to...
Do you feel comfortable that you understand, and I don't mean you, I mean all of us, understand what really is in that baseline $50 million that we have right now? I mean, outside of general rounded numbers that, for me, don't hold water, do you feel really confident that you understand what the 50 million is? Because I don't, and I've spent a lot of time on it, and perhaps you do, and if you do, I'd like someone to explain it to me, because I don't.
I thought that's what the white paper was an attempt to do.
Oh, yeah, even the budget hearings we have, and we go through it line by line. What part do you find?
Well, we don't go through it line by line, because it would take poor George 2 days to sit with me to go through it line by line.
But we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I would do it. I'd be happy to
You
actually
would?
do that. Well, I don't know,
Okay.
2 days, but I'd be happy to go. But I'd be happy to go.
Don't think you can handle it?
Yeah, but I would be happy to literally talk about every line.
Okay, so maybe once this process is done, it's voted, and maybe I would like to do that separately.
I feel, Lorraine, that last year when it was my first year, I was just overwhelmed by all the numbers. This year, after another year of signing the warrants and reading the warrants and reading the budget, this year I feel a lot more confident. So I totally understand your statement, because...
But this is my second year too, and last year I did the warrant, so I know where you're at.
I understand your statement, like, there's just so much money. It's a lot of accounts, it's a lot of everything, but I feel much better this year. You asked our opinion, so I feel much better this year than I did last year. So I know what you mean.
So let's talk about E&D. So I did a little research too.
I've done that too.
And that's pretty telling. So for everybody who's listening, I think E&D, we as a school committee, we need to decide what we want E&D to be. What is our philosophy of how we should be using it? Because I think what I've heard is, 10, 12 years ago, the district was financially in an uncomfortable position, and George and Michael came in and they cleaned it up for us. And we all owe George and Michael a debt of gratitude for that, and that is, I feel really strongly about that. But now, we're fast forwarding 10 years, and when we were at the Tri-Town meeting, one of the Bolton selectmen mentioned that Neshoba has more money in E&D than any other regional district in the state. So I went and looked at those numbers, and it's true. We have more money than any regional district in the state, and if you compare it to some of those districts that you mentioned, Nancy, if the state says that they're going to cap us at 5% of our E&D to our total budget, and we're at 4.17%, if you look at Acton, Boxborough, based on what I saw, they're at 1.99%.
According to my research, 3.73%.
What number are you using for fiscal year 16 budget?
I have their FY14 budget and their E&D from that corresponding year.
So I went on their website and looked at what they voted in this year.
Okay.
So I can share this with you.
That's a big change.
Yeah, I can share these numbers with you. It came right off the DOR.
Yeah, so do these.
But I'm happy to give them to you if you want. And I have copies of the E&D from the DOR for all the regional districts. I think it's important to note, too, that there's 84 regional districts in the state of Massachusetts. If we have more money than any other district in the state, my question is, what are we using the money for? Why do we have it? If someone like a Lincoln Sudbury is at 1.39, and let's go lower, because we like to compare ourselves to Lincoln Sudbury, Acton Boxborough. Let's look at Groton Dunstable. They have 1% of their total budget in E&D. I think the question is, what do we want E&D to be for us? Do we want it to be a fund where if we have small, and I mean small, like not $200,000 issues, that we can go and we have that flexibility? I think that was the point of it. But if we're looking at keeping $2.2 million in that fund, why are we doing that? What are we worried about? If we have a catastrophic event, then we have to go back to the towns and say, hey towns, we have a catastrophic event. We need $1 million. You need to help us. And I can't imagine that anybody in the towns would say no. So I would rather see us decide what we want E&D to be and then adjust it down. And I have a couple scenarios I've worked on, but I want to hear what you guys think about the function of E&D. What are we using it for?
I agree that we need to pull it down. I think that it's important. I think that we should note, though, in 2010, we had that other reserve fund, and so we had two funds. So when you look at the numbers before 2010, it was the E&D plus the reserve fund, and anything after 2010 is just the E&D. So I just wanted to make that one caveat in the numbers in reserve. But I think that it needs to. I think that it's high, and it's the year we need to.
And the thing is, if we every year we use $1 million, we replenish $1 million. We use $1 million, we replenish $1 million. So we're really not spending it. We're kind of replacing it. And every year it goes up a little bit. It might tweak down, but then it goes up even that much more the second year. So if we were to look at, and Nancy, I'm going to get to something you want too. If we were to get to this year taking $1.5 million out of E&D, leaving a net balance of 700, you know what? Here. And you can poke holes in this, and George, I'm sure you're going to find something, but I'm open to it, whatever it is. It's a suggestion, but if we were to use 1.5 of our E&D in this budget to offset the expense, with the caveats that Nancy raised, and I don't think anyone had objections to much of what you said, Nancy. I didn't. And then we replenish at the end of this year at $1 million instead of 1.5 million, then we come in with a net balance of 1.7 million. So that's only a $500,000 spend from E&D that we're not replenishing at the end of the year. And that will still leave us with, well, according to this year's numbers, we'd be in 4th place in the state. Okay, what about the following year? We start at the 1.7, subtract 1.5, which we're going to replenish another $1 million at the end of the year. Use that $500,000 to fund some innovative program, and that gives us a year to define what that teaching and learning or innovative program is. It would leave us with a net balance of $215,000, but we're going to replenish it at the end of the year, so we'd be back to 1.2. 1.2 to me is a lot more comfortable than sitting on $2.2 million, which is almost the cap that the state allows us, and it's cash that the residents have given us. Why are we sitting on it?
What's it, what is that for the reduction?
Pardon?
What's the, if we use these numbers, what would our increase be for the budgets?
If you use these numbers, what would I?
So it would add another
John.
$300,000, well, it depends on what you take from those adjustments, but it would essentially be a net add of $300,000 reduction.
Unless you want to take more.
Well,
So
does
you
this
do
put us
five
at
and a
what?
half.
2.7%?
It's on the revenue side, so it doesn't reduce the budget.
How do we reduce the budget?
You cut expenses.
Right.
So you can't use this to cut expenses?
No, but, I mean, we still haven't, I mean, nobody wants to talk about reducing car allowances. Why are we not talking about that?
Those are contractual.
Every single one of them?
They're written into their
Yeah,
contract.
they're in their contracts. We've
That's
gone over them.
really crazy. Okay.
Well,
Well, could we put
crazy or not, it's, it's what we have.
Could we put off the?
And we're not unusual. Other school districts have them. We've looked.
That's good. But for a 10-mile round trip, which I'm thinking,
Well, but
It doesn't
there's
happen
other
every year.
things. There's
Responsibilities.
conferences, there's other places they have to go.
and this 57.5 cents per mile IRS allows you to get reimbursed. I think it's something we should look at going forward.
So if it doesn't reduce it, is there any way that maybe we could put off the one-to-one technology initiative and maybe slow that initiative down a little bit, maybe by a year? I'm all for technology, but the conversation that we had with NIAS, it made me start to wonder, as much as we all like technology, we like to have it in our hands, we like to say that we've got it out there. But one of the things that struck me with NIAS was, when they asked us what we would do in the 21st century, our answer was the one-to-one initiative with the 8th grade. And their response was, but that's just a device.
That wasn't our response. I was at the roundtable discussion.
That was their response.
No, that wasn't the only response. We said that we were doing the 21st century, because I was sitting there and I didn't make a response.
No, you didn't. That was somebody else's.
I know,
And it
but-
came back as collaboration. And
Right,
so.
but we talked about a lot, I said 21st century learning is a lot more than a device. I agreed with your statement,
Yeah.
but we talked a lot more about what 21st century learning was at that roundtable with them.
There was a lot about collaboration, but again, collaboration is kind of what you do. And I'm just wondering if maybe we need to solidify where we're going and just make sure that the device is actually helping and enhancing teaching and learning. Like where exactly do we want to go with this? And how is it going to enhance it?
I feel like we're getting,
No, and it's fine. I'm just wondering, maybe, we're looking for ways to reduce the budget, and maybe we're rushing into something that maybe we're not ready for.
but one thing at a time, if we were talking about E&D, are we done with that?
That's fine.
I didn't.
Well, again, E&D doesn't reduce the budget.
But I think there was a lot of discussion about we're spending this money, but what are we getting in addition? We keep spending this big amount of money, but we're not getting any more. By using this money, we would actually hopefully getting other stuff that we wouldn't have been getting.
But it's really an accounting principle, right? So it's how the money is being managed in a line item way. It's not like we're putting this money and then we're eating it up and making it disappear. It stays there and then it rolls into the next year, right?
Right, and I think that answers the question, what do you want to do with it? I mean, I think what it does do, it has done for the last 5 years or so, is give you a couple things. It gives you a consistent, not guaranteed, but it has been a pretty consistent stream of revenue to offset the budget and allow the district to have a financially stable foundation. That's probably what it's done for you. I think that's the best summary of what it's done for you. So, you know, what do we want from it? My answer would be, and it may be different than other people's, I certainly recognize that, and that's fine, is to me, I see it as a stabilizing revenue source for what a technically non-reoccurring revenue source is. I would say it's a stabilizing revenue source. You know, you can look at us being in the lead, and you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Do we have the highest dollar figure? I don't.
I don't know, you gotta ask the residents that question.
Well, I said it's just my opinion. I said I don't see anything wrong. I just don't understand why people may feel that way. But I think it's also important to look at the percentage, though, because a lot of those districts, they don't have as big a money, they don't have as big as, but a lot of them may have a higher percentage than us. Okay. And the other thing, if you look at the chart, which I'm sure you got this from this DOR website, is that where you got it? Is that you'll see, if you look at our number, it's pretty stable. Okay, so kind of what I was saying, a stable revenue source. Other districts swing wildly, and that's because they spend large amounts of money. So the year that they have a good year, be it a unanticipated surplus because they changed their health insurance plan or whatever the reason might, some of the reasons happen to us, or they get a lot of extra money from the state because, you know, transportation was fully funded or something like that, they'll go way up. And in years when something happens, they'll go way down. So I think those are the two things you also have to look at the chart. What's the percentage? Some of those districts are over 5%. I happen to know that for a fact. And, you know, do we want to go like this, or do we want to go like this? You can make an argument for either
But
way.
if you go like this, we just don't have to fund it at that level.
Well,
that's the question I have for the rest of the school committee
So-
members, is what is comfortable.
right. So can I just address this slightly?
Yes.
Because I think, you know, certainly, I think there's two assumptions here that should be at least considered, okay? I think your typical yearly replenishment, though I understand why you make that assumption, given the fact that it's been pretty close to that in the last few years, is slightly dangerous, because I can't guarantee you it's not going to happen, but I think it's unlikely to happen in the particular fiscal year we're in. The way it looks right now, it's not going to happen. Do I want to say that for an absolute certainty? No, because it's between here and June. I don't know what we're going to have for excesses. But knowing some of the constraints that we have and strains that we have, two in particular, the escalation of special education tuitions this year, and a large, almost $200,000 overage in snow costs, those are the types of things we have not had the last 2 years, okay? So that right there may be $500,000 of unanticipated expenses this year. And in addition to that, our overall district-wide salary surplus is trending lower than it has in past years. In past years, it's trended somewhere between 0.5% to 1% of our budget. This year, it's trending between 1/4 to 0.5% of our budget. So that's another maybe $100,000 plus dollars. So that's $600,000 that's trending differently than past years. That, if it all trends that way, and I'm not saying it's all going to, that's the bottom line of the trend. I just don't know, because we're still 4 months before the end. But if it all, that's worst case scenario, I hope, trend, if that all trends that way, that's $600,000 or $1 million. Say we get lucky and only half trends that way, that's $300,000 or $1 million. Okay, so therefore we'd only replenish at $700,000 if that happened. All right, so that's one thing. Though I appreciate the fact we've been consistent, I don't think there's a guarantee that we remain consistent. And there's particular reasons why I think it's particularly the case this year. Other than that, I think generally what is displayed here is accurate, and it's certainly a way you could consider going at it. The only issue would be if you played it out one more block and you wanted to keep going, you get to that E&D balance at the end of $1.215 million. So if we hit the best case scenario, and that does happen, that we do get the typical yearly replacement of $1 million, you still at the end, at 2 years out, you're at 1.215, okay? So even if you spent down to zero, you'd still be taking a $300,000 hit in revenue that would have to be passed on to the assessment. Everybody always asks, why does the assessment go up more than the overall budget? And that's because we have two sources of revenue. About 80% of our sources of revenue are the assessments, and 20% are our own so-called local revenues. Okay, those are revenues that we generate or we get from the state. For the most part, if you look at those local revenues, which also includes our offsets, those have been even. Okay, they haven't went up or down too much. in this instance, those local revenues will go down $300,000. This year, they went down $200,000 because of school choice. That means the entire budget increase, right now standing at 5%, gets passed on to the assessment side. So 80% of the revenue pays for 100% of the increase in the budget because the local revenue is short. So, you know, even with the typical 1 million, 2 years out, we would have a revenue shortfall, even if we spent us down to zero, which I wouldn't recommend because that causes other cash flow issues and things like that. So, I mean, it does work. And I think there's and I'll finish on this, I think there's some sort of probably impression that I've given that, you know, I'm absolutely opposed to you doing this, and I'm really not, okay? It's certainly not my money, and, you know, I simply manage the money. I'll manage it in whatever way the committee decides to have it managed. The only thing I want people to believe, and I hope I can make people believe it without sounding like I'm trying to be an alarmist or something, is it will have an impact on what has to be passed on the assessment at some point. In the short run, it helps. In the long run, it has to hurt. It has to. It just doesn't work any other way. Because we're not going to replenish $1.5 million a year. It's just not possible. So, you know, it's going to impact the assessments. If everybody feels that we'd rather impact the assessments by significant amounts 2 or 3 more years down the line, then you know, it's certainly a reasonable. That's reasonable, but there just has to be that understanding. If we're to maintain our level of spending somewhere, you know, it is going to impact, because it's not sustainable to spend $1.5 million, which is fine. You don't have to have it sustainable. Maybe there'll be a replacement revenue source somewhere. If you thought you were going to come up with a replacement revenue source that didn't include the assessments over the next 3 years, again, maybe that's another reason to argue for it. In other words, if you were thinking of, you know, reintroducing school choice or something like that, that may build up $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of revenue per year, that would be legitimate too. I mean, that would be certainly justifiable. Anything like that, or maybe revenue source, I can't think of. But that's the only other caution I would add. Don't necessarily assume the million is guaranteed, because I don't think it is. And understand several years, 2 or 3 years down, it will have an impact.
It's
on
not
the
guaranteed, George, but over the past 10 years, it's gone from, I had it somewhere, 800,000 to 2 point.
It's right here.
Yeah, over 10 years though.
But this year, if we had the other fund as well. So.
Right, so that makes sense, but.
This had remained at 1.
Right.
Wait, no, I totally, but it's just, it's like, it's gonna help because it's so high possibly for the next couple of years, but it's not something we can sustain this helping. This help is a short-term help, but know that this help is just a short-term help.
And I just want to add one thing about George mentioned the school choice. Unless we do something different, that's trending downward. That's a good point. So I think you framed it beautifully, actually. It's about a philosophy. So I think
That was George from our meeting.
Yeah,
I stole it, George.
You stole well, if that's what you're going to steal. But I just, in framing that philosophy or deciding on that philosophy, just keep in mind the other large source of revenue that we have that is part of that local revenue is school choice, and that's trending downward as well. So the 2 to 3 years may really only be 1 year, because next year we'll have a
But
less
this is
school
all
choice.
maybes and could be's and should be's
No,
and
it's a
our best
definite school choice.
recommendations.
School choice is a definite.
School choice is a
I
definite.
got it, but you know what? If we don't attempt this for next year, and I think that 500,000 out of a 2.2 million, without knowing what the extra, if there could be extra at the end of this year for the replenishment could be, is not a risky move. And not only do I not think 500,000 isn't a risky move, I frankly think $1 million is not a risky move, based on our history. Now, we do that 1 year, maybe it turns out we really don't want to do that again, maybe we have to look at it again, but I don't know that the school committee's ever really talked about the things that you talked about and this discussion on E&D to this level. But I think it may be because we didn't necessarily really understand it. And I think it's important that not just us, but the people whose money that we're talking about in that $2.2 million fund understand what it is. So try it this year, I said 500,000 because I figured it would be a more palatable number and people wouldn't have heart failure over, taking out 2 million and only replenishing 1 million, and see where we're at with the eye to building a program, getting something for some of that money the following year. So relieve the pressure on the towns, relieve the pressure on the budget, get rid of some of these expenditure reductions that are frankly so disappointing that we would even consider that.
Should we maybe fire it up and change some of the numbers, maybe? Can we do that? And then maybe we can get to, row 7, E and D for 200. Can we try 5? Is anybody strongly opposed at this table? Oh, I'm sorry, am I over?
Go ahead, no, you go.
Putting 500 there?
I was thinking 3. I think 5 is taking.
Is 4 something palatable?
I want it to be higher, frankly. But if it's 500 for this year, I'm comfortable with it. What are you going to do with $2 million?
But that's in addition to the million that we've already taken out, right?
But you're replenishing that million. What we're saying is you would only replenish a million rather than 1.5.
We have to get to a comfortable
George
level.
just said all the things we're going to spend that on.
Right, and school choice, I
The
looked at
snow
the school
plowing.
choice and I've heard a lot with the school choice, even wanting it drawn down further possibly, so that would impact, situation here. So maybe if we come to a number that everyone, so some higher, some lower, 450, or can people live at 450? I'm just trying to get.
I know you are.
Have everyone happy, so we need everyone to
I think we have to go back to rather than, I don't want to use any more money, what is E&D for? Why do we have it? Why do we have it? What is the purpose of it? I think that's the question to answer, and then a number
George
falls out of it.
explain it?
No, what do you think? Not what just George think, what do we think?
Oh, what we should be using it for?
Yeah. I mean, not the individual accounts, but where are you comfortable with E&D? Do you want to be at the state maximum of 5%? Because we're almost there. Do you want to be at 2.5% and maybe be, in the middle of the pack?
So I contacted my town administrator and asked his comfort level at percentages, and he strongly opposed using a percentage, because I think percentages are better, because then year over year, we can all say we were comfortable with this percentage and apply it to the budget. You target, and he was very uncomfortable for a myriad of reasons that percentages are hard. I think that we have a situation and we have to bring it down. My comfort level is 500 personally. Should we just kind of go around and see where we all are? And then
What was your town administrator's number that he was, since he didn't like percentages, what was his number?
he just wanted it lower.
Oh, you remember the number?
He knows the number. It's lower.
A million low.
Didn't say so much?
He did not give a specific number, I don't believe.
Yeah, I don't think he put a number in.
It seems to me like a percentage is the best way to talk about it, because otherwise, how do we compare a huge budget to a small
So
budget?
maybe we have an initiative in the next couple of months to, as a school committee, to work and try to find our comfort level as a percentage with more analysis and maybe some more input from our town administrators and what, I don't know. I'm just trying to, get to there, but we're not there yet, and we need to keep moving. And I think stepping in the right, just in having some comfort level and pulling it down is important. But I think as a school committee, I think that would be a good exercise, maybe. Not for this budget season, for before next budget season.
So, Lorraine, you're talking about, all right, so E&Ds for emergencies, and so there should be something in there for an emergency, but it doesn't matter because anything over $10,000 will go back to the towns anyways, right?
I don't know what could happen. I just looked at the history of it, and we have been able to be, a healthy replenishment. And frankly, under George's direction, we've done more than just replenish it. We've been able to build that fund up. And yes, Kathy, to your point, in 2010, we had to combine two funds. But the fact of the matter is that we still have a very healthy
Some might think it's too healthy balance in our E&D fund, which is not to be used for any, and this is what I keep coming back to when I was thinking about this. It's, if we have a catastrophic event, if we need $1 million, that's a big deal. That if we had it to spend in our budget, we still owe it to the towns to go back and say to them, we have this massive issue. We need you to know about it, because I think it's not appropriate not to let them know. I mean, a $500,000 event could be considered a catastrophic event. So I just think that parking cash, and I understand that it's a revolving account and it relieves pressure at certain parts of the year, is a good thing, but having that much cash sitting there is not comfortable for me, regardless of whether this is 2008 or 2015.
I am comfortable with the 500,000, with the understanding that this isn't something we can constantly tap into and use.
And reevaluate it next year, see where we're at. I mean, maybe we're okay, maybe we're not.
I mean, if that's what everybody wants to do, I'm willing to do it. It seems to me that if our towns are having a similar type of percentage in their free cash account, which is the equivalent to our E&D account, and from the numbers that I pulled, we're, as a percentage of our budget, our E&D account is not out of line.
With whom? With who?
Well,
other districts?
The town's free cash?
Yes, with other regional districts.
Well, wow.
I have one at 3.75, one at 4.89. I have 1.47, 2.49, 4.42, 2.89. I mean, you know, yeah, we're on the high end of it, but we're not out of line. There are lots of places. I mean, Concord Carlisle is 4.89%. That's higher than us. So
I don't have that, but I'll trust your number. I'll trust your numbers. But I'll trust it.
So I feel like I want to do what is responsible from an accounting standpoint. I'm not an accountant. I don't want to be. But I like to rely on those who are. And so if an accountant comes to me and says, you know what, it's responsible for us to have an account this size because we don't know what's going to happen, and it's what other districts do, and it means that we don't have to go back to the towns because we got another snowstorm, then I think it's the responsible thing to do. And I'm not personally in the professional world of accounting enough to say, nope, my opinion is that's not necessary.
But Nancy, I don't think anybody would disagree with trusting the professionals to do their jobs. No one's going to tell, none of us should tell George how to do his job, but it's our responsibility to provide direction. What is comfortable for us within the context of the district and our individual towns?
Which is what we're doing. We're saying these things are important to us. We're saying don't take away the modular unit. We're saying don't take away foreign language. That's where we have input. When it comes to an accounting practice, whether it's, you know, 3.7% or 4.5% in the E&D, that's not my area of expertise. And if it's not, if they're telling us that it's kicking the can down the road and next year we're going to be in trouble and the next year after that the assessments are going to go up even more, then I'm going to listen to them.
So why don't we see what happens next year?
But there seems to be a practice with accounting to cushion, you know, which like we've seen with the modular. Like the modular, they said 85,000. We said, okay, we'll give you an extra 15, and it came in at 145, but just in case, you know. So accountants, you know, kind of
That was just a
cushion.
typo. I just really want to
It's
clarify.
not totally a typo, though. There are some, I mean, if we hired a contractor, it'd be 145.
Right, we weren't going to, yeah.
But I mean,
But the point is that there's always the what ifs. There's always like a little cushion in there. Best practice.
Maureen?
I'm really struggling with this because
The budget or the E&D?
both. Because I look at the things that are being proposed to be cut, and a lot of that looks painful, but my fear is that we can take more money out of E&D, but I feel like we're just, my fear is that we're really just postponing the problem for a year.
It's a Band-Aid.
And that next year, we're not going to have, you know, I look at what my heating bills have been this year, and I look at how much we spent putting gas into our snow blower, which is sort of my comparison to what we've spent on snow removal and stuff, and I feel like we're not gonna have that million to sweep back in, so we're gonna spend more and replenish less, and we're not, you know, next year we're not gonna have 1.5 million to take out of E&D unless we're bouncing off almost zero or something, and then we're gonna have just as big a bigger percentage increase next year of the assessments, and we're not gonna have any place to take it out of. And I really don't know what to do. I'm sitting here listening to both sides, and I'm just.
And I agree with you, but what I find really disappointing about this is when it comes down to, okay, do we do technology or do we do the space and sped? And I pick space and sped. You know, only because that's what I'm hearing the need is for, and we can put off a device. You know, we can put off that. So, but the teaching and learning, I'm saying maybe we should look somewhere else. Because it almost seems like that's the most painful place to go. And that's what I find disappointing.
The technology is, the initiative for this year is $30,000.
There's more to it than that. It's
Right, and it's, you know, we talked about innovation. It was a huge jump for us to do something that we have the capacity to do. I really appreciate the foreign language, so I spent years on that committee and trying to promote the foreign language. But, you know, we had been building the capacity for this initiative for a number of years. We're ready to launch. And, you know, I was trying to protect that because it's the innovative part of this budget that you've been talking about. And we're ready to go. We have teachers who are excited about it. We have, you know, we're ready to get into the high school with it. And so it's a small amount of money to get there. To get to $1 million takes a lot of money, either from revenue or expenses, and that's people on the expense side. You know, that's just the nature of budgets.
So we changed a few of them, the other lines. So if we went down to line 15, it says eliminate modular move. If we kept that, we could take the 80 and not the 100, or?
Actually, no, because the modular move was assumed to be 145, so what would the number be?
So would it be 145 now?
No.
It would be 100.
I thought it was 100 out of it.
Yeah.
The 145 was
So-
if we hired a contractor,
So if-
but we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But we, yeah.
So a reduction of 80.
We need 100 for the modular.
Yeah, we need 100 there. Michael on line 15, not 80. You put 80, you took the.
Right.
It should be 100, I think.
No, it should be
No,
80,
80.
because that's a reduction.
That's the
Oh,
reduction.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It gets confusing.
And because the accountant's here.
Oh, that's right.
So then the other one was, that a couple people said were,
The sped teacher,
If you wanna get down.
I don't think, I think that's,
Yeah,
if
I-
sped is one of our biggest, we need it, and all of a sudden it shows up on a cut list, that's
And
like,
then
wow,
a new,
really?
so
Why would we
if
do
we
that?
do all of these things, oh, where are we? That's where we are, so auto count.
I feel strongly that this special ed teacher, it's just, I think I had a lot of special ed people at my table when we talked there, but saying they have a hard time servicing the minimum services, getting the IEPs done in time that they're by state law they have to do with the staff that we have now. So to not give them the support they need is directly not giving children the support they need, and basically what we're legally obligated to give to them. I personally don't believe that's happening everywhere. I don't think they're getting everything they're supposed, every kid is getting all the hours they're supposed to be getting. People could argue with me, but that's my personal opinion. I don't think it's happening everywhere. I just think, not because people don't want to get, I just think how can you, it's just not, it doesn't match.
And George, what does that put the numbers to be in your?
Virtually what I say when I gave those numbers a few minutes ago is it's essentially the same bottom line.
Okay. Thank you, John.
$10,000 is the state bottom line. I choose a rough figure, so it's virtually that.
Yeah, the original numbers were 1,008,500.
So this is our new reduction based on not getting rid of the new
It's
proposed
not a
height.
reduction, but it's the net difference in spending.
Net, right. It's a combination of revenue and expenditure.
So what's the total budget increase that based on this new?
So the budget would be going down 350,000, so it'd be just like 4.2.
2.25, somewhere in there. But the assessments would be where we talked about. The assessment increase would be down in the 3s and 5s. Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe respectively.
Tell us a little bit about that kindergarten grant, the 72,000.
Sure, that's a kindergarten grant that was cut out of the governor's budget, so we've been receiving that, applying for that annually. He cut it across the state, so he eliminated it.
So it didn't matter whether it was full day, half day, it was
It was a
just
full day
kindergarten.
enhancement.
It was a full-day enhancement to
Full day,
help
okay.
districts move towards full day.
Okay.
And his logic was that many districts are already there, so they don't need the money.
I see. So districts that already had it for everybody were also getting that kind of.
Correct.
So it wouldn't have mattered if we were farther ahead in the
Exactly.
pipeline.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're all impacted the same way. But that's a current cut as well as what we were planning for the future.
So can you put the other slide back with the numbers, the big one? Just the, I just need to.
The original proposal?
Yeah, we changed them.
I did, I can go backwards though. So
That's what we started.
That's what we started with.
Is that what you meant?
No.
No,
Oh,
you
I'm
mean
sorry.
the original
Yes,
proposed budget.
Thank you.
The 5
It's on our
PowerPoint?
computers.
Are you talking about the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Now, while you're searching for that, I hope I can ask this question and not be too distracting. The 75,000 kindergarten confirmed numbers, where does that, what did you originally assume and what is that? Were you assuming like our old numbers when we only had X number of sections of full-day kindergarten and of course the rest to be half-day whether they wanted or not? I mean,
A little bit of that,
people-
plus we have some that meet a criteria for a sliding scale, so we had to factor that out. And so we were able to arrive at that.
Okay, so that, okay, so the original number that you were using was,
Essentially last year's number coming forward.
okay,
And so we just had registration, so
and so we're seeing an increase in the number of full-day enrollments and tuitions.
So we're seeing this, a slight increase, but, so we used last year's number, so we wanted to make sure we were replicating that. So we felt comfortable being able to use last year's number.
Okay.
Kathy, is this what you wanted?
So this would get it down to, what, 2.2 million roughly?
The increase would be
Yeah.
down around 2.2 million, right? But then with a shift of local revenue and et cetera, the overall, kind of the reverse of what I talked about earlier starts to happen.
Right. So remember that roughly 3.5% is just fixed costs of salaries and benefits, and then the other roughly 1.25, 1.5 is the special education out-of-district costs.
Actually, I'm doing it, it's probably more like 3.25, 1.5 with that special
3.25,
ed, because the special ed wouldn't change.
this is your best guess on where you could take expense reductions.
Without impacting classrooms and teachers, yes.
So you find anything in 59 that you cut?
What about renegotiating existing contracts? There must be some opportunity there.
What kind of contracts?
I don't know, you're the accountant, you tell me.
Well, I'll clarify that for, I am certainly not an accountant, so I don't want
Okay,
to
he's not an
think I'm an accountant, but
You're a
anyway.
finance guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think we try to look at our contracts all the time. You know, we just, as I talked about last time, I think, we negotiated our bus contract, and, you know, we're looking at a health insurance contract. So we look at our major contracts all the time. We don't have a lot of contracts out. 2 years ago, we negotiated our copy machine contract. It's a 4-year contract, so we can't do that now. You know, I think it worked out reasonably well. You know, we've cut that expense over the years. We've cut our telephone expense over the years. You know, so we do negotiate things. Believe me, we look for places to save money everywhere we can find them, but there are only so many opportunities on a regular basis.
Julie, have you had an opportunity to put your 2 cents in enough?
I could, yeah, I just find, it's hard to see, just so much money for so little.
Yeah.
It's just, so I don't know,
Anybody want to make a motion? Have any other points of discussion?
My only, I know this won't have a big impact, but I do think our user fees are some of the lowest around. And, I mean, it wouldn't be a huge impact, but it would be some revenue source coming in. Like our athletic fees, I think, I don't want to pay, you know, I pay 3 athletic fees every fall, and I don't want to pay more, but I do know, when I talk to other people, like friends at Oakmont, friends at Shrewsbury, they're like, okay, what, are you kidding me? They're pretty low. So I don't, and I think I discussed it with Tanya, and she thought they were pretty low too. Athletic fees?
Yeah, for, you know, comparing them to fees around our league, we are one of the lowest.
One of the low, and I just think, you know, for example, I know the academics have to come first, but look at our amazing athletics this year, and our athletic department is not getting one increase of anything, nothing. I mean, look at the success it has. You know, so I think everyone's kind of working at a bare minimum, and we could raise our user fees. I think that's one option. Not a whole lot, but something.
But do you happen to know, George, what we take in on user fees?
Yeah, we think about $160,000 in Varsity athletic user fees.
Tanya, did you know what the average is around here?
I'd say it's gonna be right around 200. I have a little spreadsheet on my computer, because we do collect that data in our league quite a bit, just to compare each other's schools and, you know, the different caps and what they have for each school at the middle school and high school level. But average is right around 200, I believe.
This is crazy. Just feels
That
not
would
right.
That would cover the new salaries.
That doesn't feel right.
We're still at 4-point-something% increase with very little to nothing. It just doesn't feel right, but. Would you consider taking a bigger amount of E&D?
Me?
No, well, you collectively.
No.
What, more than the 1.5 million that we're now talking about?
Well, remember, when you say 1.5, it makes it sound like you're sucking up 1.5 and you're never going to see it again. What you're not going to see is the 5, the 0.5. You're going to replenish at least the 1, or historically you've replenished.
But George,
Yeah. I'm not trying to dissuade you from any amount of E&D. Anybody can use as much E&D as they want. I just would like to make sure everybody knows what the impact of that is and can be, okay? So that decision can be made. But I do have to say, and I don't like projecting E&D balances in March, because a lot can happen. I would have been off by, money at each of the past years. I wouldn't have had it right in March, okay? But if you decide to use the E&D at 1.5 or higher, I just want to say that at this point right now, we have, Pat Morelli, who's our senior accountant, is here too, and I think she can back it up. I mean, we've hammered this number really hard for the last 2 months, trying to project things out. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think right now, it looks like our replenishment amount would be about $600,000. That's what it looks like right now. I'm not saying that can't change, but that's what it looks like it's going to be. I mean, but that could change. It could change by a couple $100,000. That means it could be $400,000, it could be $800,000. I want, just being honest about it, but I want you to understand that that's something at this point in March, we really can't control, okay? It is going to be what it's going to be. We don't know when Medicaid payments will come in. If those things come in right, maybe we'll go to the $800,000 range, and I'll say to you in, September, no problem.
Don't know, but you'll still have over $1 million in that account.
As long as
to
right,
replenish.
absolutely. As long as everybody understands that's the worst case scenario, that's correct. I think I'm pretty confident that we'll get back to over $1 million. So as everybody understands, that's the worst case scenario, 1.5 million. The worst case scenario would be, in the 1.234 million range, hopefully.
I think what I hear, the direction that the school, using your framing words, is the philosophy of the school committee wants to move toward not using E&D as a recurring income of the district. And not that it won't, but if that's the direction that the school committee wants to go, I think that's an important message, because one of the things we heard from Tri-Town, and I think it's an accurate statement, is that the issues of the expenses of municipal government is sustainability. And the conversation about whether it's economic development or looking at expenses overall throughout all of municipal governments, it's about sustainability. And if the direction of the district is to stop using E&D and to curtail school choice, those are going to be two parts that we're going to have to just put the communities on notice that those are going to be factors going forward. Because I think, as we see tonight, and we've done this many times, it's difficult to change existing staffing patterns, except for enrollment, changes, because we respect the programs that the teachers are delivering on and the administration is leading. So it's just something I hope people remember next year when we're here, when we're having this conversation, that, I think that's what you're adopting.
I don't know, I think that's dangerous, because we all know that once we go back to the towns next year, and it's that percentage of the increase is going to be higher than it is already this year, and we're at 5% this year from our original proposal. If next year we have to bump that up even more and still not get anything new out of it, that's going to be a bummer. I don't want to do that again. We've done that since 2008.
Maybe we should write some grants.
What?
Maybe we should go after some grants.
Well,
I mean, we don't do anything except ask the town. Well, we do a little bit of it, but really not much. There are other means of, getting educational revenue. There's partnerships, there's all kinds of stuff, and we don't pursue any of that.
Well, it's not true we don't pursue any of it, but we're not successful on some because we often don't meet the criteria of the large-scale grants. I mean, we get a lot of smaller grants, and we obviously apply for all of the grants that are entitlement grants that we can apply for, but most grants of any fee, large amount, just have criteria that we can't configure our demographics to meet.
Or they have requirements that you spend the money locally going forward.
Right, there's matching parts.
Things like that.
Yeah.
But there's so much industry around here, I think we can get some partnerships going, or something.
it's
A
challenging.
lot of them have surprisingly restrictive.
Yeah.
Maybe we could put it as a topic for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be explored for this budget cycle? or-
No.
Okay.
You never could, you can't use
I
grants
just
for
wanted to clarify what
operations.
people were saying, that's all. How it impacts this discussion right now.
I'm just trying
I think
to.
we're talking about next year's would be different, but if we have partnerships or grants or something to kind of offset some of this stuff, we might be better off.
For the innovation, grants never will fund operations, because they don't exist.
But is innovation what we're looking for?
Absolutely, I mean, that's what you'd want to pursue.
So for example, we could, like, buy the Chromebooks with a grant or something. If it was a technology-based grant or something.
Right, something in that vein, yes,
But we couldn't hire a computer teacher.
correct.
So, where do we go from here? We could, if there's anything in particular that we wanted George and Michael to come back with, if there are numbers that are missing or questions that aren't answered. Our hope was that we had enough questions answered by tonight that we could actually vote tonight. And remind us of the ramifications if we don't vote tonight.
Well, we're extending the regional agreement after tonight,
The agreement to have a budget
by March 15th.
approved by March 15th.
We did that because it was on a Sunday.
Would anyone like to postpone the vote, or should we vote tonight?
No. Yes, vote tonight.
I'm in favor of voting tonight. Maureen?
Well, we certainly, anything else we would do in the future would be if we wanted to continue our discussions to reduce more, right?
Right.
If we voted tonight, would we be limited in terms of discussing any future cuts? Or?
Yeah,
We couldn't-
you can always cut the budget.
Right. Okay, that's my real question, is that tonight, if we vote, we're committing to our maximum.
Correct.
But we could continue discussions for reducing further.
Yep.
But how realistic is it that we would do that? I'm not questioning.
Well,
I love it, but.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if, like, for example, if people are reasonably comfortable with these modifications to our current budget and felt comfortable voting on those, if we still, since people, I don't think everybody's convinced that we've cut all that we can, we could theoretically continue discussing further cuts or tabling.
Increase the amount of E&D.
Well, yeah.
Or decrease it, is that what you mean?
Decreasing the
yeah.
overall.
Decrease it, but increase the number that's up there.
I see what you're saying.
Increase the contribution.
Which I really, last time we met, I really wanted us to try to come in at 3%. You can say, well, that's like throwing a dart against the wall, but not necessarily. And we're not even close to that right now. And we still have cash. So, I hesitated to put the two scenarios together because I thought, what I really wanted to do was take $1 million out, and if I did that, I figured George we'd have to do CPR on, and a couple of you would be not happy. But that would get us in a more comfortable zone, not 3%, but it would get us in a more comfortable zone. And I know it doesn't feel good, but then you evaluate what happened next year. And George, I get it, but last year in March, did we think, oh, we had all these other extenuating things that coulda, woulda, might have happened? And maybe they did and maybe they didn't. We don't know. We can't predict the future.
No, that's correct. The difference is this year they have happened. So
Those particular things
Yeah.
have happened.
This is the first year, as you know, for your quarterly updates, we've actually had these overruns. In the past years, I've been concerned about them. You see that in your quarterly updates. This could happen, like you said, and stuff like that. That's why I'm a little bit even more nervous than normal this year, is because they have happened. We have incurred the extra money in special ed tuitions, and we have incurred almost $200,000 in total snow costs additionally. That has happened, so we will
But we
have.
do have a built-in safety net in the towns, right? I'm sure the towns don't want to hear that. I don't want to look at anybody over there. But we do have a little bit of a built-in safety net. If we needed additional funding, we would go to the towns.
We have to go to town, we have to go to town to vote.
In this fiscal year, it would be extremely difficult.
Right. Because they, by regulation, they would expect you to use E&D if you had it first.
And we would. We'd have it. Again, it's a philosophy discussion, and I just think that it's uncomfortable to have that much cash sitting around.
So what's the next step, Joey?
Well, somebody could make a motion, and we could vote, and it would either be approved or not approved. Somebody could make a motion to approve it as we've amended it already, or they could make a new amendment to the motion.
Can I make a motion to approve it with the amendment that we've made?
As it appears here,
As it
correct?
appears here.
We have a second? Anyone want to discuss before voting?
I just want one quick question. This roughly $1 million reduction is roughly brings our increase overall budget down to how much of an increase? Our original budget proposal was a 5% increase over this year.
Right.
This brings it to.
It'll be somewhere in the low 4s.
Right.
But the assessment impact is going to be lower because of the
Right.
E&D.
Well, that's what I wanted to clarify, what our budget increase is and versus
So it's
what
like
our.
4.3, 4.25. So
It looks like, yeah, the budget increase and the assessment increase will be pretty similar, somewhere in the low 4s. I just don't have it here, but somewhere in the low 4s, I believe. And it looks like to me, again, I don't want to promise it, but I want to plug those numbers in. But back of the envelope, the assessment increases will be about 3.5 for Bolton and Lancaster and 5.5 for Stowe.
3.5 for Bolton, and what was it?
Lancaster.
It was 6%. 6.19%.
Let's go.
Again, I want to run those numbers again, but it'll have a $1 million impact, just about $1 million impact on the overall budget. Most of it's revenue, so it doesn't impact the bottom line of the budget. But
So we're not too far off from the 3% that you were looking for.
you're close to the effective 3%.
Anyone else have any questions or clarification before I ask for the vote? All those in favor of the motion as Kathy proposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All those opposed? Okay, 4-2.
Congratulations.
2/3 vote, so passes.
Yep, passes. We don't have all.
Right,
All of our
2/3 of the
members
members
still.
present voting.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but is a non-member, if somebody's not here for a vote, since you're going by 2/3, isn't there a no vote for them? Not being there?
2/3 member present would leave, those present, we'll check it.
Yes, you have a question?
The statute says that 2/3 of all members are required for a budget to pass. There being not 2/3 voting in favor, you don't yet have a budget.
I thought you just said 2/3 of all members present.
Two-thirds of all members elected.
Of all members elected, okay.
Where are you
This
reading
is
that?
chapter 71, section 16B.
I wish you read that at the beginning of the meeting.
It's 5 1/3 votes, it's 2/3 of 8.
Unless there's something different in the district agreement, that's what the open meeting law always says. It's the total number of members on the committee, not those present.
Okay.
All right, so
we're gonna keep at it.
And when do we have to have it?
Tonight.
We're supposed to have it by yesterday, but.
Yeah.
Tonight's
Okay,
legal.
Tonight's legal because of the holiday.
This is the
So,
May I just offer a suggestion? I would think if there was a likelihood that further work might reduce this number, I don't believe that you would get a lot of flack from the towns by extending voluntarily, like not enforcing it. I can't speak for the other board members anywhere, but I think the absolute number is what, April
30th.
April 30th.
Yep.
No, that's not true. We have to have our warrant to print by April 3rd, April 4th. So our budget needs to be done.
State requirements.
When's the next meeting? When's
That
that?
doesn't help us.
March what?
week from Wednesday.
So
Sure.
we have the possibility of calling a special meeting?
Oh, sure.
Trying to
But again-
get all 8 members present?
I guess the question is what would move it to a passing budget?
Well,
We need one member.
that was going to be my question. The people who voted no, what would it take, or why, what would it take to change your vote to a yes? Because until, I mean, we can sit here and talk forever, but
Yeah. So we need 2, actually.
You hedging your bets?
Would anyone be interested in making another motion for a different on that? Is there something that would make the no votes into yes votes if you want to propose it?
Just don't feel like I can defend the entire budget and not agree with me, and you guys may get it, and that's okay. I just don't feel that I can defend the budget.
All right, well, we'll work on pulling together a meeting in a week's time. Should we try to do that?
Meeting next
We have a regular
We
meeting
have
next
a
Wednesday night.
Next Wednesday.
Just because this is the Monday, maybe,
Oh.
well, this one's, but we do have one the next one.
All right.
in 9 days.
All right,
Just do it then.
and we'll re-vote then, and anybody can ask any questions they want in
We
the
have to make sure
interim.
everybody
We vote on a different
We have to make sure
budget,
everybody
though.
comes.
You don't have to vote on a different, you don't have to, but
You can make a different motion.
You can make a different motion, or somebody could make the same motion.
But what if we never get all our members here?
You need 6 votes.
you need 6 votes.
Six
regardless.
votes.
6 votes.
At some point, you don't have a budget if
Okay.
it goes to the state.
Is there some direction that you want to give myself and George to work with the administration about?
Anyone?
I think, and you can keep telling me I'm wrong, and I'll accept that, but I think that there has to be something in the underlying 50 million that we can do. There must be some lever somewhere. I can't believe that it's managed so squeaky clean tight, that there's no cushion anywhere.
Well, I hope it is. You guys can respond to that.
I mean-
Well, it's not a question for you, it's a question for them.
I just said, you can respond to that.
Look again. What's the target?
Okay.
What's that?
Is
What's
there a
the target?
particular
Is there a
target?
target?
I'd be more comfortable if we were somewhere between 3 and 3.5%.
On expenditure.
Please. And if not, then, maybe not. But
Well, as I always say, it's about hard choices. So, ones that I'll make to bring to you to be public and talk about, but ones that you'll have to vote on.
make them hard for you too, because those are hard for us.
I agree. I agree. Well, those were hard for me too.
But mobile unit was really cast a shadow of doubt. That was a big big disappointment.
I know, but that was hard for me to put that on there because I know how much, I was the one advocating to have it. Internally, I'm the one who said, that's the one we need to have. So it was very hard for me to put up there.
Okay, so we will revisit this topic at our next meeting and take a vote again. Moving on our agenda, we have a, yes.
I'm sorry, Nancy, but I didn't hear when the next meeting is.
Next Wednesday night.
This coming Wednesday or next Wednesday?
A week from this Wednesday, which is, anyone have the date?
25th.
25th, thank you.
And our drop dead date for the budget is the 24th, so.
It's the 24th?
Yes, we have 2 advisory meetings left, where we're hoping to put the budget to bed on the 24th, because then the selectmen need to review the warrant, so we're just gonna have to make some assumptions on the budget, do the best we can.
Okay, sorry. Okay, we have a policy up for review for a third reading.
Is it actually a third reading when it's pulled out? Or just the fact that it showed up as a reading?
It's the third time we were talking about it, right?
Physically read it, we just say, are we gonna accept it? But actually, I want to put a hold on it again till Wednesday, because I've got a couple of questions out there coming back.
Okay.
So,
It's fine with me. Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
So that'd be 4 now? It's in the packet, you have to sort of.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are any issues, I need to get them in, and so they get changed before it's ready.
Okay, next on the agenda is the school climate survey.
Moving away.
Did we skip building grounds and
You
security?
moving away from it?
Yes, we just did.
Oh, just to.
Yeah,
Oh.
Lynn just asked if we could put it
Oh,
off until
okay.
next week, because she's waiting for some answers.
Oh, okay, I thought, okay.
School climate survey, Lorraine?
I took all of the comments. Kathy had an ad that I thought sounded good, and I just want to make sure everybody is comfortable with it. In the technology component of the survey, this question asks or states the tech lab is available when I need it. So that has a scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree. And as long as you guys are okay with that, we'll keep it. We did add a line in the first paragraph that states that the survey is not an evaluative tool for any administrative personnel as agreed upon. And the only other thing, other than minor, like Julie, I went back in, had to every single one put period in. But it made sense, so we did it, and that was good. But this,
Had question marks, but no end punctuation on anything.
and you know what, I couldn't argue it, so.
It's better.
The first paragraph, the last sentence, the survey window will close on March 30th, and now that we've pushed MCAS out, which was the point of doing this during MCAS, when do we want the survey window to close, and when do we want the survey window to open?
I think people will get to it regardless. So I think if we give them like April 1 to April 15.
Okay.
Yeah, just before break.
How do they find out? It just shows up in the email?
Yeah, so a letter has to be written or like an intro email.
So the email that you all received with the link to the survey was the email that would introduce the survey. And I don't have it, so I can try to release it again, but I also added on that the survey is not to be used as an evaluative tool. So we're covering our bases there. Is there something that...
Can I just ask, and just to clarify, can administrators still use the data for their goals?
My understanding was that if you want to use it for your personal goals,
And the administrators too. I'm not going to evaluate them with this, but,
Well, you can't, because it doesn't ask for names.
right.
So,
But to have, like you say, teachers feel like they can't approach the I don't remember a question, but unapproachable, well then I would hope that would be a goal to say, become more approachable.
Exactly.
Like that.
I just want to clarify that. I don't want to go against what the school
you're saying?
says.
So you want to make it part of the goals, not to.
Well, I want it to be a tool that they use that I can say, I want you to pay attention to what the survey says.
Because otherwise, what's the point of the survey?
Exactly.
Right.
Well, the point of the survey is for us to build
Right.
our goals, but that's
But also, I
everybody
think that's
else's.
very valuable.
Pardon?
I
Yeah, I
hope
mean,
that you would want to take that information and say, okay,
Do
nobody
something.
feels like they can talk to me, well, hopefully I'm going to work on that.
but as long as it doesn't replace any other evaluation
Exactly.
tool,
Right.
and that's the key.
That's the key. I agree.
Right.
I'm 110%.
Okay.
So I have a quick, now I had gone in, I flipped through it, and then I went to go back to answer it, and I couldn't go back in because it said I already did it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you can't go back in and cheat.
Right. So do you tell them that up front, that you just run through it, you can't go back? Do you want to tell them that? Because if they're, I know it doesn't take long to do, but if they're in the middle of it and they walk away and then they come back again?
Well, it doesn't capture unless you hit submit at the end, right?
Yeah.
Can you go backwards?
But I thought
I think you're saying she couldn't get back in.
No,
Did you hit submit
I
all the way
don't
down
think
to
so.
the end?
I think I just went through the whole thing and then I got a.
No, because you can say.
I think
and
I
go
like
back
the way
to
you
it.
did something and came back to it, as long as I didn't shut it down.
Because I know that I went back and said, you've already done it, you can't do it. Because I logged out and came back in again.
Oh, so
Something happened to me too, I didn't know when I did, remember? I made you send it to me again.
Oh, it was an email address.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, because you have to send it to a different email address, yeah.
So what is it that we want, you want to make sure they can go back in?
No, just let them know.
Or let them know they can't?
Right, let them know that it's a one-shot deal.
Please make sure you allow
You
yourself
finish it.
20
Yes,
minutes to
start, you
finish
finish
it
it.
in
Because,
one
for
shot.
That was
example,
good.
it's very similar
At
to
least 20 minutes.
the
At least.
climate surveys I do at work, but they have an option that you don't have to complete it in one sitting. You can save, and as long as you don't submit, you can go back to it. So if that's different
Do you tell them
here.
how long it takes? I mean, you might want to do the open thing, it's going to take about 5 minutes, so make sure you get 5 minutes to do it or something.
I think I said 10 to 20, because if you don't do the open-ended responses, it's less than 10.
Yeah, but if you're making comments.
But if you're commenting on every single thing, it's really.
It's 45 minutes.
Yeah, but I wouldn't, I hope not, oh God, I don't want to. I don't think we need to go crazy on it, because we don't know what people are gonna, most likely, someone's not gonna respond to every single section in the open-ended responses, right? But who knows? Okay, so I think the point is that you want to make sure we tell them to allow themselves enough time to complete the survey because they can't go back in, or do you want them do you want to allow them to go back in?
No, don't let them back in, just be done with it.
Okay.
Well, it was just me.
Is
So
that,
last time I went in, there were a couple of duplicates, 34 and 35.
There was
and-
one duplicate, and then someone said there were a couple more, but they weren't. So there was one duplicate that's been removed.
Well, I checked just before the meeting, and there were 2 duplicates.
34, 35 right now.
34 and
that I have.
35,
34, 35.
and there was another one in the 50s.
My area has enough staff to support quality student learning.
Maybe I didn't take that. That's weird. Am I using the right? Okay, and what's the other one?
It's in the 50s, 58 and 59 or something like that.
Professional development provided by the district helps me improve the quality of my classroom teaching.
Okay.
Those were the only typos I caught. I don't know, I still think it's too long, but it's
But
beyond
the
that.
teachers are willing to take it, so let's let them tell us what they think, and then.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to discuss about the survey?
I think what I'm going to do is circulate an email with the intro to this with the link on it and get your feedback. Unless you want me to, I don't think you, I mean, I think we probably need to make sure that everybody agrees to what the email says, right?
And have we figured out how we're going to actually deliver it? Is Alita emailing it?
No, it's coming from the district tool.
We talked to technology, and they can set up a email address that says from the Neshoba Regional School Committee.
Right.
It won't be coming from me, so the teachers won't think it's coming from Michael's office. It'll say it's coming from the school committee.
Okay.
Then, did you want to ask him how we wanted to leave that mailbox, if it's going to accept replies,
good.
or
Yeah, so
it's going to be just a...
So we
send
need
out
to
a-
have, for the tool, you need to have an email address that this thing comes from. And even if I put in, you know, Neshoba Regional School District or School Committee, it won't allow it to go because it's not real. So that's why I asked Alita, can you get us an email address? But Alita came back and suggested, or said, do we want to accept emails into this mailbox? But then that means somebody has to check it. And she had actually a great suggestion, and that was if someone tries to send an email back to that mailbox, that an automatic response would go out and say the mailbox doesn't accept emails, contact your rep and give the names and email addresses of the reps for each town.
That's a great idea.
That was Alita's sign. I thought it was great.
Good job. As always.
So, thanks.
And then the last question, in my mind anyway, is what do we do with the data once it comes in?
So once it comes in, the tool allows you to aggregate the data in different ways. So you're going to be able to cut it by school. You could cut it by subject area. And we'll do a lot of that. And it graphs it all out for you. And then it aggregates the questions or the comments for each section. That was one of your questions. Each section will have its own grouping of comments. And that report will be completed, and then we distribute it, and we review it. And then from that, what I think that Kara and Nicole and I were planning on doing was sitting down and looking at drawing some conclusions from the data. Because the way this is written, there are questions in an early part of it that we kind of come back around to at the back, but we asked it a little differently so we can find out, do they really mean what they say, or are they just responding quickly? So we can kind of pick through some inferences and implications, and I'll share. But that's about 2 weeks worth of work.
So we share amongst ourselves and with the all the teachers and staff? Or
Oh, you mean as far as how do we get back to them?
What do we do with it?
I think you got to look at what the data tells you, where things are great, where we need to do a little bit more, and then we need to decide how much information. We don't have to give everyone every single response, and we don't have to give everyone every single comment, but we do need to give them an overview of this is what we learned from the survey, from what you told us. These are the things we're doing well. We can give them a lot of the data points, but I don't think we have to give them everything. And I think it might be overwhelming to give them everything. So I would synthesize it down into maybe a 2-page report with findings and an executive summary and attach that to the back just for us, because unless someone asks for it, I'm assuming we don't.
Right.
And I'm on that boat too.
Yes.
Lorraine, when you're categorizing the information, are you using numbers 1 through 5 to make those categories?
What do you mean?
When you said you could do it per school, you could do it by school?
Yeah.
I mean, is it the IP address that tells them what school they're at?
Oh, these are
or-
drop-down boxes?
Oh, because nothing's dropping down.
That's
Well, you
'cause it's a
can't,
PDF.
you can't see
Okay.
it from here, but these are
Oh, yeah.
drop-downs, so you have to pick.
Okay, no, that works. That was my question.
Yeah, it's not a live form.
Okay. Anything else with that? Okay. Subcommittee reports, finance report? Maureen, is
Finance
there any-
subcommittee didn't meet since the warrants were signed last week.
Okay. And the only other one on the list is the space study. Lorraine, is there any?
Maureen, can you, because I wasn't there.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
did include the draft update or interim report such as it is. I believe we will be coming out with another interim report very shortly. Bob Sikansky has already started working on it, but since we were long overdue for some sort of a interim report, that is what we've got. And we've spent a lot of time talking about how the current space impacts the schedule and how difficult it is to schedule and how many kids can't get exactly what they want because it can't be scheduled because of space constraints. I feel like there hasn't been a lot of discussion recently. Okay. Fair enough. Superintendent's report?
Yes, I feel like it's very brief because I haven't been here. For some reason it's not linked, so I'm going to go back to the thing. Just the I appreciate the cancellation of the meeting last Wednesday. It's the first time in my 18 years as superintendent that I've had to ask for a meeting canceled due to my health. So I very much appreciate it. As people said, we did have the MEAS visit, and it went extremely well. Thank you all for participating. I think from meeting with the folks, they spoke very highly of our team, the organization. Leo and Cheryl did an awesome job,
Great job.
Keeping the train on tracks. They should be at the MBTA. And we do expect a report, a draft report, probably just before school ends, and then we'll have the summer to look at that and get it back to them with any suggested corrections or edits that they will entertain, and they'll decide if they accept them or not, and then we'll get a finished copy probably in October.
Wow.
Yes.
That takes a long time.
Yeah, it does. It has to go to a committee, and then they have several stages that they go through. The Rotary Club of Neshoba Valley was grateful to the school district for a Purple Pinky Day, and they raised $1,538, and the Bill and Melinda Gates matches that amount, so the result was $4,600 was raised for fighting polio. So congratulations to all of our kids participating in that. We were talking about SPED earlier. We were invited by the state to participate in a round table to share our strategies of what works. And so we had a team, the director who was here, and Dr. Graham and Jody Specht went off to talk with the state, and it was a large forum, and they talked about different aspects of our work that we think are successful with our kids, and so we thank them for going to that. Community Reading Day was Friday at Mary Rowlandson, so it was a great day for adults reading, and they had a great turnout. And we just finished up our parent-teacher conferences for the first session. We'll have another session in 2 weeks, and I think this was really the first time we've done it this way. All reports are we had great attendance, and people felt the conferences were very helpful. So I appreciate everybody's cooperation with that. It's a big change for our teachers. So, and that's my report.
Great. Consent agenda?
I think
We don't have quorum.
still waiting.
Okay.
But I have one thing for items to be considered for, it doesn't have to be the next, but at some point, the Emerson study is out, the health study.
Oh.
And I read it, but it was kind of differently presented this time on the website than the one we had seen 2 years ago, I think it was. They did it the same way, but exactly the same way, same questions as always, but they had only the entire, all the schools shown as one, and not just our school shown. So I just thought maybe it was because they only give that to our school. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I would like to put on the agenda to have the person come and present.
So we are actually meeting this Thursday. Right? Got moved around a few times.
Yeah.
So our health curriculum group is meeting to review that, and so I'm not sure we'll be ready for the next meeting,
Oh,
but
yeah,
probably the
yeah.
next meeting,
That's fine.
we'll be meeting and talking about that.
Probably better, actually.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I read the agenda, next item is citizens' comments, did I miss that?
Oh, I thought I had already taken them. Do you have other
That
comments?
was-
Feel
That was
free.
in relation to.
That was the public hearing.
That was the public hearing.
Okay.
I was addressing.
Okay. Sorry.
But I would like to offer a couple of thoughts. And this is to be construed as a citizen as opposed to representing the position of my board. But it, I think in general follows the tenor of the input that I provided during the public hearing, but my brother saying, because Stowe, they say the unenviable position, no matter what the bottom line number is, of having the highest assessment increase of any of the three member towns. I was a part of the negotiating team that negotiated the unit A contract under state law, participation representing the selectmen from 3 towns. I was the designee of this round. And I must say, it came as a bit of a shock to me, and shame on me, I guess, for not asking this question while I was in the process. But I came away from that process thinking that we had done a pretty tight job, and I think if it were just that, I would stick to that. We negotiated a 2% increase for this year. If I remember the numbers right when they were presented at the beginning of the budget, that translated into a 4.58%, off of a 10%, total increase of 80% of the budget. And when you're talking about the $50 million, that's the elephant. And it's, the rest of it is kind of the flea on the tail of the elephant, unfortunately. So I came as culture shock to me, I guess, when I saw the degree to which that rolls out through steps, lanes, whatever the jargon is. I don't know what we've done about it, but I guess if I'd realized that, I would have been bold enough to try to go to 1% or something less than that to minimize the total personnel cost increase in this year's budget. The second thing is, the towns appropriate the dollars for assessments, not your budget. So I think it is somewhat self-serving to state, for our concern. When we came in tonight, we heard it was 5.07%, but because of shifting minimum mandatory contributions, it was up to 8-point-something% assessment. Now with the shuffling, even though it isn't finalized, I think it's safe to say that it will be something less than that. But I'm hoping that what we can see when you folks vote next time is the actual numbers as they apply to the assessments. Because that's what we have to budget. That's the number we have to put in our warrants. And town meeting representatives need to be able to look at the increased dollars, assessment dollars, in your budget versus the total increase in revenues that the town can anticipate. I referenced those in that letter, and you can go back and look at those numbers.
Our budget document will be updated and it'll have the exact assessment numbers.
Okay, thank you. But obviously, when we reconvene for voting in 10 days, it would be nice to see what those actual numbers are to the, if you come back with variations that might impact those, what those would translate
I see.
on assessments. Lastly, I worked for 4 different municipalities before I worked ultimately for 20 years for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts before I retired. And when the state faced revenue shortfalls, as inevitably happens, through various administrations, both Republican and Democratic gubernatorial administrations, we faced very harsh realities when our revenues didn't match what we wanted to spend. They included nasty things, like furloughs of employees, layoffs, early retirement to reduce the employee workforce. It isn't just, when you say, look at the 50 million, this is taken as a given. It isn't, if you were limited, suppose for the sake of discussion, the towns unanimously voted a lower figure than whatever you come out with. It comes back to you. You have the choice of agreeing with those cuts and adopting a budget that would force you into those cuts, or we go to confrontation and goes to the state. Ultimately, it gets passed. But don't, yes, when you say the painful issues, look for the painful issues for everybody. Look for the painful issues we have to face when we get up on the floor of town meeting. Hiring freezes, hiring freeze or delays in hiring, not ideal. But a lot of times, we operate at a lot of state agencies. If you authorize 10 full-time employees and we have a state hiring freeze, we'd go for 3/4 of the year with 8, rather than fill when somebody left. Not ideal, but we did it. Don't discount any of the really tough options that you may be available to you.
Yes.
I'd like to applaud my school representative, Lorraine Mesco, for her strong stance against accumulating a lot of, in my view, and I think hers, excess E&D. I think it's a terrible use of money just to make our chief financial officer comfortable. It means that taxpayers are paying more than is necessary, and it means that kids are getting less spent on them than is necessary. That should be a really minimal fund, maybe $250,000, and it should be split in some way between more spending on the kids and less taxes. I think George came across as somewhat misleading because, yes, it's a one-time thing when you go to, say, a policy of keeping the E&D target $500,000 lower, but it's a forever, year after year after year, amount of extra either spending for the kids, some combination of spending for the kids and lower taxes, unless you really don't replenish. And the odds of your not replenishing, I think, are quite small. And if you don't replenish and you have to put it in the tax rate for next year, I would much rather pay the exact amount next year than year after year paying an extra amount to provide you guys with this cushion. It's just a terrible thing to have over $2 million sitting in some savings account, maybe getting 0.5% a year, when you could do some combination of lowering taxes and spending more on the kids. So I applaud Lorraine for going after that, and I hope you'll continue to push and get that target down to something much lower than where it is now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I think we have a quorum now. Consent agenda. Unless I see any heads nod or objection, I'll consider the warrants from March 13th, 2015, and the minutes from February 25th, 2015 approved.
No.
Yes. Okay.
I'll speak for my own section. I think there are 2 other sections, but I'm not going to speak to those. I'd like to change this because this doesn't really reflect what I had asked for. First of all, 2 things. Sorry about that. I'm all over the place right now. I think what isn't in here is that I had asked for a 3%, to reduce the ask to a 3%. I didn't see in here where it said I had asked not to impact students, teachers, or the classrooms. And I think it's important that that's in there, that was direction that came from the school committee. And if you need to attribute it to me, that's okay too. So that needs to go in the budget discussion somewhere, that section.
Not to impact students, teachers.
Yeah, I think I said teachers, students in the classroom or something like that, but I was looking for 3, because we talked about 2 or 3, and it was like, no, 3%. 2% I think is unrealistic, but, and then in the policy subcommittee section, I don't think that's well worded. think it should say, reported the committee met with a group of teachers, because this is what we did say, who were concerned because they were told the climate surveys was intended to replace a staff-driven administrative evaluation. And I'll give you this. And then I'd like to strike the, stated there was some misunderstanding with the teachers, stated there just stated that the intent of the survey was not to be used as an evaluation tool for administration. It just clarifies what I had said. Are you okay with that?
I guess. I mean,
Well, do I remember word for word what you said? No, I do. I do, because I chose my words carefully.
anything else? Okay, so we'll assume with those changes that the minutes from February 25th are approved otherwise. Okay. We've already talked about items for next agenda. Anybody else have any? Okay, looking for a final motion.
I would adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
Need a contact?